Good afternoon, everybody. Before we begin, I want to give a big shout out to the AIA, DC, and AADU committee for organizing this event. I had a lot of fun putting together this presentation, and I hope you will enjoy it too. In fact, next time you come to the neighborhood, I hope you get to experience it in a different light. The presentation is divided into 3 sections. First, I will talk about the neighborhood context and go over the macro and micro forces that contribute to the incredible growth of this dynamic waterfront district. The neighborhood is divided into 7 sub-areas. In the interest of time, I will cover 4 sub-areas that have direct frontage to the river. They are distinct in urban character and are in different stages of development. Then I thought it would be instructive to explain the work of the bid and provide examples of how we engage developers and integrate city planning and urban design into the day-to-day work. But first, learning objective. By the end of the presentation, you will walk away with a better understanding of the history of Capitol Riverfront, as well as the existing project and what's in the pipeline. For designers in the audience, you will understand the role of a bid and how we can be a resource in your work. So I joined the bid team 1 year ago, although I often joke that under this 2020 timeline, the past 3,000 days have been nothing but memorable. Before this role, I spent 4 years at the Mayor's Institute on City Design. I also worked at a consulting firm, federal agency, and commercial real estate company on the Amazon campus in Seattle. My contact information is listed here. If you have any question or want to follow up, please feel free to email, call, text, or slip me a DM afterwards. For those of you who are not local, and I know there are several joining us from Boston and the West Coast, Washington, D.C. is divided into 4 quadrants, with the U.S. Capitol building at the center. Now, some people think that either the White House or the Washington Monument is the center, but it's actually the Capitol building. So by this logic, we are mostly located in the southeast quadrant, with a portion of Buzzard Point located in the southwest. The entire neighborhood covers about 500 acres and located between the U.S. Capitol complex and the Anacostia River, with 2 miles of public access to the waterfront. If you come to the neighborhood on Metro, you will take the Green Line and exit the Navy Yard Ballpark Station. And of course, we are home to the Washington Nationals and Audi Field soccer stadium. Earlier this year, we went back to update the urban design framework from 2013 to measure and quantify development progress over the past 7 years. I built a model and estimated the latest build-out numbers, comparing them to the full build-out scenario in 2030. You can see here that at full build-out, the neighborhood will be 37.5 million square feet. The residential population skyrocketed from 4,100 to 15,000 people today, and will eventually reach 35,000 in 2030. Just for some context, when I was at the Mayor's Institute, I have worked with many communities with the population this size. The housing production also increased dramatically from just over 3,000 units to over 14,000 units today, and will get close to 22,000 units at full build-out. The numbers of workers also increased. What you see as office square footage is not a typo. The reason that the office square footage went down from 2013 was because the U.S. Coast Guard building in Southwest relocated. The building has since been converted into a rental building. At full build-out, we will get more than 9 million square feet of prime office space. We added close to 1,000 rooms in the past 7 years and are planning to add 1,000 hotel rooms by 2030. Now, these are remarkable numbers. I moved to DC after college in 2012 and remember driving to the DMV nearby and saw all these cranes along M Street. Almost a decade later, the construction activities are still going on. Here's what the neighborhood looked like back in the days. Just to orient yourself, we are looking south at the Anacostia River. The area between M Street and the river is Washington Navy Yard campus, and that's how we got the name Navy Yard. You can see a battleship docked on the river here. So the neighborhood was an industrial backyard of DC, populated by big warehouses, auto repair shop, surface parking lot, and adult entertainment venues. The pocket of residential use was at the public housing complex right here to the left. The project has since been rebuilt as a mixed-income development with a one-to-one replacement of affordable units. If we are holding this presentation today in person, we would be meeting at my office at 1100 New Jersey Avenue right here, standing around the architectural model of the neighborhood. And here's what we look like today. Now we are looking north toward the Capitol complex. My office now is a real building on New Jersey Avenue and sit on the diagonal axis that connect the US Capitol building all the way to the Anacostia River. The Navy Yard campus is still here to the right, but the federal government has since decommissioned 48 acres of prime waterfront real estate for redevelopment. I made this slide with a punchline that the high-density buildings that went up is now blocking M Street. The aerial is actually a few years old, and I can tell because the DC headquarters building wasn't built in this image. We are in the process of getting new aerial shots. For those of you who live in DC, you know that sending up a drone in the sky can be quite a process. Of course, the transformation of the neighborhood didn't happen overnight. One of my favorite quotes is by Andy Altman, the former planning director of DC under Mayor Williams, and also my professor at MIT. Our neighborhood is a case study example of city building at its best. Now, this is a key slide I want to spend a bit of time on. When we put together the annual report around this time last year, we wanted to tell a story of how the neighborhood came to be to help people understand the building blocks of the community. So we identified 10 macro and micro forces that catalyze and inspire redevelopment. Starting with the top left with Metro that opened in the 90s. We are located on the Metro Green Line. For those of you who live in the region, you know the power of being close to Metro, whether it's where you live, where you work, or where you shop. In 1995, a division of the US Navy relocated to the neighborhood from Northern Virginia. This stimulated the first wave of office tenants, with thousands of workers moving to the neighborhood, as well as federal contractors that have to be within certain distance from the Navy. Mayor Tony Williams has a vision of turning the Anacostia River into an amenity that rivals Rock Creek Park on the west side of DC. He turned that vision into public policy through the Anacostia Waterfront Initiative. The nonprofit leading the cleanup efforts were created as a result of this plan. And when it's safe to do so again, I highly recommend you to go on a boat tour of the river. You will experience the transition from the urban environment into natural landscape, watershed, and biodiversity. For designers in the audience, the first architectural moment arrived in the mid-2000s. The architect of the US DOT building is Michael Graves. This audience would recognize his signature postmodern style. But along with the development, the US DOT also brought 7,000 workers. And what's incredible about the project is with 7,000 people working, they only built 700 parking spaces underground. So that's a 0.1 parking ratio. And they only could do that because the proximity to metro across the street. The public housing complex I mentioned earlier received a grant from the federal government and was rebuilt as a mixed-income community with a one-to-one replacement of affordable units. If you walk around the area today, it's difficult to tell the difference between the affordable units and market-rate townhomes. So with this top row, we identify the forces of transportation, workforce, public policy, architecture, and more workforce, as well as housing. In early 2000, the federal government decommissioned part of the Navy Yard campus, and they picked Forest City to lead the redevelopment of the 48-acre site, which we will talk about in details later on. Of course, this is Capitol Riverfront, and we are home to the Nationals ballpark and Audi Field. The ballpark opened in 2008, right at the height of the last recession. But what it did was it put the neighborhood on the map, and people now attach the name ballpark to Capitol Riverfront. In fact, they had to change the name of the metro to Navy Yard Ballpark. We also have amazing open space network from the river to 10 acres of beautiful parkland designed by famous designers. I will talk about them later on. You know your neighborhood arrived when Whole Foods opened in the area. And in the neighborhood, we have two markets that serve as the biggest amenity for the residents and the workers. The one thing that's often overlooked is the investment in public infrastructure. In Capitol Riverfront, the city invested over $2.3 billion, but the return on investment is incredible and multiple times more. So on this slide, I talk about the power of transportation, workforce, public policy, architecture, housing, real estate development, sport and entertainment, public space, amenities, and infrastructure. They all come into play to build this neighborhood. Here's a hero shot taken around this time last year at the 2019 World Series. The neighborhood may be best known for baseball, but we are actually so much more. So now I'm going to shift gear and talk about 4 of 7 sub-areas that have direct frontage to the Anacostia River. First, we will talk about the Ballpark District. Then we will hop over to Buzzard Point in the southwest. Then go back to the yards, and then pay homage to the Washington Navy Yard. At full build-out, the Ballpark District will reach almost 5 million square feet of development, with over 2,200 residential units, 1 million office space, 560 hotel keys, over 250,000 square feet retail, and over 30 restaurants. So we ran the number 2 weeks ago, and right now we are at 90% built out. For those of you who are local, the Ballpark District is about the same size as the Wharf, Phase 1. What you see in the middle is Half Street. It was imagined and now built as the great public space of DC. So when you exit the metro onto Half Street, you can make your way all the way to the ballpark with restaurant and retail on both sides. To me, one of the most exciting parts about design is implementation, and to go from rendering like we see on the last slide to construction. As of today, everything you see is now complete, including Half Street. Here's the aerial shot of the Ballpark District. It's bounded by M Street to the north, First Street to the east, the river to the south, and South Capitol Street to the west. We have 4 office buildings along M Street. 1M, designed by HOK, was delivered in April, and the National Association of Broadcasters is the anchor tenant. They have a new hipster cocktail / men's barbershop on the ground level that I cannot wait to try out when it's open. Right next to it, 25M is planned as office with ground level retail. If you go there today, you will see a cool event space made of shipping containers. They do outdoor movies and pop-up restaurants. 55M is one of the oldest office buildings in the neighborhood. It sits on top of Metro. And on top of the building is an urban farm that's on my list to check out. At this corner here is 99M, delivered in 2018 and designed by Gensler. It has a great coffee shop around the corner on M Street right here. Now the residential product. Avidian Condos is just delivered, designed by Gensler. The podium of 1221 van has very cool 2 sport bars that if you have been to the Nats game, I'm sure that you have been to Walters and Mission. West half by ODA is very cool. The balcony right here have direct view of the ballpark. And if you're standing on Van Street looking north and in the alley, you will see that the building tilted ever slightly to the west as it makes its way up. Then we have the residential twins by the same developer and architect. The Kelvin right here is a rental building, and Envy on N Street is a condo building. Hickok Cole is the architect of First rental building. And along First Street is what we call fast casual corridor. You can see almost every restaurant that you go to on this corridor. And I often come here for lunch. Just south of the ballpark, we have Dock 79. And right in front of it is a very popular gathering spot, an outdoor beer garden. Around the corner is a secret, well, not so secret, rooftop bar that I highly recommend. Adjacent to the Dock 79 is VERON. It's brand new, and the developer built the Riverwalk extension for this project. So the boardwalk connects this project to Buzzard Point on the opposite side and all the way to the yards and Washington Navy Yard. The vacant land next to VERON is a development parcel. The program is TBD, but given the location right at the water, we think it will be a hotel and a condo building. So I wasn't kidding about the F&B options in the Ballpark District. It's anything you can think of, from salad to Chipotle to you can get good tacos. Southline is a very good restaurant at Dock 79 that I highly recommend. The Nats is going to build a retail pavilion adjacent to the ballpark, and it's designed by Gensler. So if you look at the map here, the retail pavilion will be an addition right where the laser is pointing. So if the Ballpark District is 90% built out, the next sub-area that I will talk about is just emerging. Buzzard Point now has Audi Field soccer stadium as a catalyst, the same way that baseball was a catalyst for the Ballpark District 10 years ago. It also has significant waterfront. Today, Buzzard Point is only 25% built out, but we anticipate close to 5,000 residential units coming over the next 10 years. There's going to be a food hall, a charter school, and even a hotel at Buzzard Point. The Riverwalk Trail extension is going to connect Buzzard Point all the way to the Washington Navy Yard and beyond. By the way, the background image you see here was our submission for Amazon HQ2 bid. Populous was the architect of Audi Field, built in 2018. I actually have not been to a soccer game yet. The season started in mid-March, right before the quarantine. There's no office building at Buzzard Point yet, but we have 4 residential buildings. So River Point will have a food hall as the retail podium. And it's going to be delivered sometime in the next 2 months. Right next to it is Peninsula 88 condos. And it's a beautiful building with amazing interior, overlooking the river. Verge by MRP is under construction right now, and it's going to deliver over 300 units to Buzzard Point. Watermark is an adaptive reuse of the US Coast Guard building I mentioned earlier. And it's going to have a charter school on the ground level. Everything else is planned, so the program could change in response to market conditions. But as you can see, a lot is coming to this area over the next 10 years. Our developers are thoughtful and intentional about who they bring as retail tenant. A lot of superstar chefs are coming to Buzzard Point. From a food hall, DC Central Kitchen, and a big fish restaurant. I included this slide because I want to talk about the role of infrastructure. When you're thoughtful and intentional about the design, infrastructure can add enormous value to the development. In this case, the Frederick Douglass Bridge is a gateway to the neighborhood, and it creates a sense of arrival as you come up north towards the ballpark. Today, the construction is moving along, and the bridge will be completed in 2021. And when you're driving on I-395 and approaching DC, you can now see the arch lit up at night, which I think is a very cool scenery. The third sub-area we are going to talk about is located between the ballpark and Washington Navy Yard. So if the ballpark sub-area is a high-energy entertainment district, the yards is a lifestyle and fitness-focused area of the neighborhood. There is significant frontage of the river here, and people come here to relax, exercise, walk their dogs, and meet up with friends. Our signature event in the summer, the Friday night concert, takes place right here. At full build-out, the yards will have over 3,000 residential units and 3 million square feet of office space. Today, it's about 60% built out, mostly on the east side, closer to the Navy Yard. Because this used to be at the heart of the Navy Yard campus, you will see many cool adaptive reuse industrial buildings at the yards. On the west side of the sub-area, closer to the ballpark, there's a plan to build 3 to 4 more office buildings, with additional residential buildings closer to the river. The plan is to integrate a new metro entrance when the project moves forward, and there's going to be a new street that runs mid-block, providing direct access to the river. The rendering you see here is an old one. The latest version is being finalized, but I like this image because on the street level, if you can squint, you can see that people are social distancing. This aerial shows the boundaries of the yards, with M Street to the north, the Washington Navy Yard to the east, the river to the south, and First Street and Ballpark District to the west. The new metro entrance is going to go here. And the reason that we are building a new entrance right across from the existing entrance across the street is because right now there's so many people living here. And the Navy Yard itself has over 17,000 workers. So every morning and in the evening, you will have people crossing M Street, trying to get to and from metro, and it creates a bottleneck. The new street will run mid-block from M Street all the way to the river, creating public access. Chemonics is the international development company. Their building is under construction right now. And every time I go to the office, I see that they make more progress rapidly. Gensler is the designer of the building. When we talked to Chemonics, they told us that they decided to locate in the neighborhood, less so about baseball, but more so about the soccer stadium in Buzzard Point, due to the nature of their workforce being international. The DC Water Headquarters is a stunning building. It reflects the light at different times of the day. And we toured the rooftop of the building. And I think they do event rental on the rooftop. So you can actually rent the rooftop overlooking the ballpark, the new bridge, the river, and the entire neighborhood. Their marketing team does a phenomenal job promoting this project because for the past 3 years, it's been on every cover of the architecture magazine. We talk about Michael Graves' US DOT headquarters. The original design was going to be a full block development, but I'm glad that they cut it in half to provide access on 3rd Street, connecting 3rd Street all the way to the river. Thus, if you're going north on 3rd Street, it takes you across Capitol Hill all the way to Union Market. The Boilermaker shops and lumber sheds are 2 mixed-use adaptive reuse buildings. There's a great ramen shop right here, the Hatoba Ramen, and they recently opened. I think they opened last year, and I highly recommend that you check it out as well. For residential product, there are over 1,900 residential units in the yards right now. And if we do a 1.5 multiplier, that's 2,800 people living here in this sub-area. What's notable about the buildings here is that the diversity of architecture firms used by a single developer. So we have Perkins Eastman, Studio, SKI, Bob Stern, Johnson Fenn, and others. Perkins Eastman is working on a rental building right here. And a shout out to Perkins Eastman for being a sponsor of this event. Estate is the latest addition to the yards. And we tour the interior, which is phenomenal, beautiful interior, inspired by Paris. Foundry Grove is an adaptive reuse building and is located right next to ARIS by Bob Stern, the former Dean of Yale Architecture. Now, 327 units is a lot of buildings, but by using glass on top, it makes the massing looks more human scale in person. Gill is another rental building delivered in 2019 and is on the same block as the Bauer condos built by P.N. Hoffman, the developer of the wharf. This building right here was going to be office, but due to the last recession, they converted into rental building. So on M Street, you have Harris Theater, and on the other end is Vida Fitness. Also, plenty of food options here as well. Having Harris Theater in the neighborhood is a great amenity to the residents and workers. District Winery is a great building with beautiful, beautiful interior. My colleague Bonnie actually got married here. Hi, Bonnie. So the centerpiece of the area is actually not a building, but a 5.5-acre park by Paul Freiberg. It won the Urban Land Institute Open Space Award a few years ago. And the biggest innovation here was that the developer built the park before the surrounding buildings as a catalyst to induce development. The underwriting process was possible because having the US DOT as office tenant 1 block away guarantees a stable rental and property tax income from the federal government. In terms of urban design, the park did many things right. It extended the grid all the way to the water, providing public access to the river. It built a top-notch boardwalk along the river, connecting the Navy Yard to the ballpark. It offers different user experience around the park. So the people who are sitting here are seeking a different experience than people who are walking on the boardwalk, who are under the bridge, who are sitting here, or just having a picnic here. It features an iconic bridge that looks amazing on Instagram, but even better in person. It has a retail bay that brings people even closer to the water. And it incorporates public art as a vertical element because everything else is so horizontal. I actually can keep going. But the question I often think about is that tension between design intention and design outcome. Clearly, Paul Freiberg and his team spent hours and hours on renderings to make them perfect. This is how people use the park on a summer day in DC. So the title of this webinar is Design Home Run. And my message to everyone in this call is that any project will not hit a home run unless it contributes the highest quality public realm like this park. The final sub-area we will talk about is the OG Washington Navy Yard right here. Built in 1799 with over 17,000 workers, 2 million square feet across 40 acres. But now you know that you can take the trail and the boardwalk from here, past the battleship, across that Homerun park, going towards the ballpark, and all the way to Buzzard Point uninterrupted. The existing Navy Yard Museum was built in 1963 and is located inside the campus. There's a new plan to build a new museum in the neighborhood. So earlier I talked about how something as primitive as infrastructure can inspire and catalyze development. The 11th Street Bridge Park is going to be the highlight of Washington, D.C., and it's located right here. I know better to end this section with a capital D design for this audience. So OMA won the design competition for this project. That's again going to be the highlight of Washington, D.C. But at the forefront of this project is a thoughtful, equity-driven community engagement process led by a nonprofit. I highly encourage everyone to look up what Scott Kratz and his team are working on to bring this project to life. Now we will talk about the bid. As a 501c6, we operate more like a chamber of commerce than a usual 501c3 nonprofit. And as a place-based organization, we organize our function into 5 buckets. So I am in the planning and economic development team. There's a clean team, parks team, events team, and we do stakeholder engagement. But embedded in all these 5 functions is marketing. At the BID, we operate with a clear understanding that marketing is a culture, not a department. So you can imagine an arc that goes above all these 5 programs, and that's marketing. When you have this critical mass each year showing up in your neighborhood, the question that we ask ourselves is, how do we leverage and make the most out of this visibility? Where do people come from? How do they get here? What do they do before the games? How do they spend time after the games? What can we do to enhance their experience and make people stay longer, come back here, bring their friends here, move here, and invest in this community? We have about 100 baseball and soccer games per season. Using this number as the baseline, we plan, organize, and partner to add over 200 special events, generating and attracting over 156,000 attendees. For people who didn't have tickets to the World Series, we brought in the biggest screen we could find and threw a watch party in the park. This weekend, Pumpkin in the Park is happening on Saturday. Our residential buildings have amazing rooftop, so we organize happy hours for the community to check them out. We think about all-season programming, how to activate inside the ballpark when baseball season is over, how to activate the parking lot adjacent to the stadium for social distance outdoor movies. How to activate the sidewalk leading to the ballpark to promote transit and create Instagram moments. Since COVID, we have been agile to work with restaurant developers, property owners, and DC government on the permits to build outdoor dining that you see all over DC right now. Now, as architects and designers, you must be thinking, what's so difficult about setting up fences and 2 jersey barriers? I can tell you that getting the permits and walking through the approval process can be quite complicated. So I'm looking at the calendar and it's almost the end of October. To get ready for winter months, we just did a bulk purchase of commercial heaters instead of having individual restaurants paying above market price because everything is sold out. One of the projects my team will be working on in FY21 is corridor planning and creating gateways to the neighborhood. Our tagline is DC Amplify, Life Simplify. I often ask my team, how can we quantify and distill this message in illustration? We often tell people that we're so close to the Capitol building. I ask my team, let's draw it and communicate the distance in graphic. We are working on multiple corridors, but I'm using New Jersey Avenue as an example here. I do think that sometimes we take for granted that we are 2 blocks away from the most important civic building in the country. So we ask the question, how do we make this connection legible in physical planning? What urban design intervention need to happen to make the walking experience safe, comfortable, purposeful, and interesting? So even though everything between the Capitol building and the freeway is outside our boundaries, there are things that we can do to make the pedestrian experience more inviting. For instance, we could enhance the existing infrastructure by painting the bike lane. We could install wayfinding and signage. We could do public art. We could layer on programming. There's a running group in DC that do 5K and 10K in different neighborhoods. I want to bring that group here. So maybe people can meet at the park and run up New Jersey Avenue to the Capitol complex, make a round, maybe to the US Supreme Court, and come back down New Jersey. So thinking about each layer as a programmatic elements that together will foster a stronger connection to the river. Another corridor project next to New Jersey Avenue is First Street that also connects to the Anacostia River. The existing road was built for the old industrial neighborhood in the past, in the image I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. The road is overbuilt for how the neighborhood functions today. The 2 travel lanes in both directions encourage cars to zoom by in the high-density residential area of the neighborhood. Because we know, and I'm guilty of it too, that people will drive based on street design, not the speed limit. We are working with our partner at DDOT to reallocate space for pedestrian safety and activation zone. Removing 1 travel lane on both directions will help narrow the street and reduce car speed. We will move street parking to the other side of the bike lane to create room for activation zone. And there's a host of other uses that could benefit the community during and after COVID, when we are smart about how to plan and redesign our street and infrastructure. As a bid, we also do a lot of research. We work with consulting firms to prepare studies and report. I encourage you to go to check out our annual report and these two reports on metro and public investment in public infrastructure. So here again is our hero shot when we were a finalist for Amazon HQ2. I just cover everything you see here in this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That was a great presentation. I especially like when you express your definition about the design home run as it relates to park use. So now the floor is open for questions, and you may still continue to submit questions in the Q&A window. And we'd like the discussion to focus on design and planning. So to kick off this discussion, Jeff, I would like to ask you, with the COVID-19, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the Capitol Riverfront BD?
So COVID has definitely impacted the work of the BID. I don't have a degree in public health, so I will not and cannot comment on the science of the pandemic. But during the first 3 months of COVID, we were on a reactive mode, like most people. But now that we have a better understanding of the pandemic through public health experts like Dr. Fauci, we can better manage risk and anticipate uncertainty. Our immediate priority right now is to support the restaurant and retailers. We are doing it as a single entity and collectively by working with other BIDs in DC, and there are several. Our president, who is also in this call, Michael Stevens, is in constant communication with leadership of DC government and other economic development groups. So I was at the ULI conference, the fall meeting last week, and in the medium terms, most people agree that things may get worse before they get better. And you know what that means for us is it may take longer to achieve a full neighborhood build-out of 37.5 million square feet. But on the flip side, what COVID did, it reaffirmed what we knew all along, that our competitive advantage as a neighborhood is the river and the open space network that some other neighborhood in DC may not have. And we will always have those open space amenities as a constant. And as a BID, we are going to double down the efforts to enhance them.
That's great. Thank you. And this goes to the next question, is that are there any plans for repurposing Building 170 at the northwest corner of Tianjin Street and 3rd Street Southeast?
Let me go to that slide so that people will have an idea. So there is a lot of plan right now. Let me find it. So this is Building 170 on Tianjin. So there is a lot of interest among developers that come and talk to us. It's such a great building, and there is, this open space next to it that can be incorporated into the adaptive reuse of this building. We have to be thoughtful of how to do that because the location is so good in that it's like right next to New Jersey Avenue and right behind the US DOT building. Across from it is the brand new Thompson Hotel that I did not talk about. So, there is a lot of interest from the developers. What what it will become is TBD. I think it's not public yet, but we are having a lot of interest on this building.
That's great. There's another question also relating to this area, the yards, is that how much of the office space in this area is spoken for? And are these entities still planning on using office given the pandemic?
So, the use of office is a big topic at the ULI fall meeting last week. And certainly there is some uncertainty about what the plan will look like moving forward. Right now, I think we are at the point where all the office occupants are still undecided. The working from home has been, and I still think it's an experiment that people are still not fully committed yet. They see that it's workable, but they have not fully committed. So a lot of the office tenants are still holding on and not make the decision until we have better visibility on how the pandemic will play out. That will impact how the yards, especially on the west side, will look like. Right now, there's a plan to build 3 or 4 office buildings right here, but that could may change to something else. So it's TBD.
Right. I think this is really an area for stay flexible and be resilient in all different ways.
Exactly.
I want to segue this to another topic, which relates more to the career development, especially for the students who are right now in the design school and the emerging professionals, still relating to this COVID-19 situation. What kind of advice do you have for this group of up-and-coming young professionals?
Sure. So for people who are in school and people who are looking for jobs, I know that the job market is tough right now. And I think the best advice I can give is that I know that you guys are applying for jobs. So, just keep doing what you're doing. But understand that a career is not always linear, and always be open to try different sectors and different fields that may be less obvious. But, if you're passionate about design, you can always find a way to incorporate that in your work. And at the end of the day, the design will find you. When I was in Seattle, I had a meeting with the CEO or general manager of Seattle City Light, which is a public utilities company. Her formal training is a landscape architect. And she spent a chunk of her career at WRT in Philadelphia as a designer. And somehow she ended up running one of the biggest public utilities company in the country of a major US city. So what I'm trying to get at is that your career is not always linear, but there's always a way that you can integrate design. And when I say design, I'm not using it as capital D design. I'm talking about the design process and design thinking in your work. But so I think your question can also be applied to the employers, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of managers and leadership on this webinar. And I want to tell them is that, at this moment, the least you can do is to be human and reply to those resumes you get in your inbox. Because, as a profession, as people in the design profession, we are in this together. And you need to work with your communication team to craft an encouraging message. So when you decline applicant, that's a good way to exit.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep. Actually, I also want to add one more thing, if we have time. I want to talk about mentoring because I think it's the most misunderstood concept that took me a while to really understand it. So a lot of people think of mentoring or mentorship as a one-to-one relationship, but I would encourage people to think of it as a mentoring matrix, or almost like a tic-tac-toe or hashtag, where you are in the middle. And of course, you're talking one-to-one with someone whose career you aspire to be. But at the same time, you look left and right. Maybe it's your coworker, maybe it's your classmate from grad school. Always check in with them. But at the same time, also look, take someone on and be a mentee to somebody else. So by building out this grid of tic-tac-toe, the mentoring matrix, I think it will make you a more holistic thinker and a better professional. And this matrix doesn't need to be a 3x3, right? It can expand to, for as wide as you want. And it can shrink down depending on the point of your career. But please don't think of mentorship as just a one-to-one relationship. So diversify your mentors.
That sounds like a great advice, Jeff. And it's also very thoughtful. There's another design question I got, is that among all the multifamily projects in your neighborhood, which one, from a design perspective, which one is your favorite?
So I cannot endorse. I cannot pick. I have so many favorite buildings. When I first got here, first moved to DC in 2012, I love Aris by Rob Stern, and I'm impartial to his work in general. It's very traditional for very Yale School of Architecture design, but I really he's one of my favorite architects, so I guess that's my favorite building.
Awesome. I've got several people asking whether you can make your slides available offline.
Of course, I think I can ask Katie to send you guys the deck.
Yeah, Jeff, if you want to send that to me, I can forward that to all the attendees.
Yep, for sure.
Thanks.
Great. Jeff, I want to ask you another question, and this might relate more to the career development. Because you, starting off with a planning background, and then you took on several positions that are out of the sort of traditional design firms. And I absolutely admire the kind of impact that you and your organization is making for DC, for the population. I think they're great. I'm curious, what do you like the most about working for a bid?
Right, great question. So I think you almost answered my question at the beginning of your how you frame it. For someone who has gone through the federal level, the local level, and the private sector, working at the bid level or a district level is a new experience. And I especially like Capitol Riverfront because it's a development bid. And, I went to school with a degree in real estate and planning. So I'm very happy to be in an organization that promote development. The value that I bring to the team is big picture and high level thinking because I spent 4 years at the Mayor's Institute doing just that. So going from that, 30,000 level and coming down to, where the rubber meets the road, I think that's very enlightening to me. And I'm very happy to be at the bid. The second part that I can give you is that I'm a very competitive person and I love a good challenge. We are at 70% build out right now, and closing that 30% delta is critical and will be challenging, and even more so after COVID. But my attitude is, let's spend the next 10 years doing this right and not the next 100 years fixing it. So on that front, we are about to kick off a strategic plan to serve as a blueprint for the next 5 to 10 years that can take us to the finish line at full build out. And that's critical to the organization, and it's a very exciting project to me. And of course, I also wake up every day and go to work knowing that my colleagues are the most dedicated, kind, and thoughtful group I've ever met.
That's great. Is there any other questions? If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A window.
And also, our contact information is listed on this last slide. So if you have any question, feel free to reach out to Min or myself. We are happy to follow up. All right.
Okay, looks like we've got another question. Do all bids in the DC area have the same 5-part organizational structure, or is this left up to each bid depending on their individual priority and location?
So I think it's the latter, where Capitol Riverfront is a development bid. So we do have a bucket that's called planning and economic development. I would think that if you go to a more mature neighborhood like Georgetown, where everything is almost built out or built out, their focus will be more on retail and attraction of office space and retailers. So it varies by the nature of the area.
And before this meeting, I looked up online, and it looks like in DC right now, there are 11 bids, right?
And
awesome.
we work so close with them, especially during the COVID, because, the recovery will take the effort of everybody in the district. It's not just, you cannot just isolate to one location. We are all in this together.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any other questions? Okay. I thank you very much for participating in this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something from it, or get inspired. And Jeff, thank you very much for the presentation. I will now hand it back to Katie.
Hey, thank you so much, Min, and thank you, Jeff. That was a really enjoyable and insightful way to close out the workday. And it really made me excited to visit the riverfront again. So if anyone has any further questions after we close out today, please do reach out to Jeff and Min. Their contact information is there on the screen. You can also reach out to me at education@aiadc.com, and I will be back in touch with the slide deck. So thank you all for coming. Stay healthy and stay safe out there, and take good care. All right, have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.